Hey guys, so I'm going to do this for fourth and fifth grade, so I don't have to make two separate videos. But for your Tuesday remediation assignment, and this is election day, so I thought that it would be fitting to do an activity on voting. So the activity you're going to be doing today, you're going to be reading the Constitution tells the states who has the right to vote. And this is a fourth, fifth grade level assignment. So I'm going to read this for you, or you can read it to your. I prefer that you listen and then you read it to yourself. So the United States is a federal republic. This means that power, like the power to pass laws, is shared between the federal government in Washington, D.C., and the governments of the 50 states. The federal government has certain powers. The states and their local governments, like cities and towns, have certain powers. The Constitution of the United States sets out which powers belong to the federal government and which powers belong to the states. The United States Constitution is the highest law of the land. One of the things that it does is it tells the 50 states what they must do and also what they are not permitted to do. Permitted means allowed. The Constitution gives the states the power to conduct elections and to make their own rules about how they do it. And it also tells them what they are not allowed to do in conducting elections. For example, states are not allowed to reject people who have the right to vote in an election. The Constitution says that to be allowed to vote, a person must be a citizen of the United States. You are a U.S. citizen automatically if you were born in the United States. There are also ways to become a U.S. citizen if you were not born there. One way is a process called naturalization. Not all citizens are allowed to vote. For example, a 10-year-old may not vote. For much of the early U.S. history, mostly white men who were at least 21 years old had the right to vote. Other groups, such as women, were not allowed to vote. Since then, the rules about who has the right to vote for president and other elected officials has changed, and more groups of American citizens began being given this right. These changes were a result of additions or amendments to the Constitution. 27 amendments have been added to the Constitution, and three of them have to do with who has the right to vote. These three amendments prohibit the states from denying the right to vote to some groups of citizens. The three groups are African Americans, women, and people who are 18 to 21 years old. Over time, these groups was given the right to vote. In addition to elected officials, the Congress has have passed laws so that citizens with voting rights can vote. One law makes it illegal for the state to do anything to prevent that prevents or makes it especially difficult for these citizens to vote. For example, but some states found ways to prevent some citizens from voting, even though they have a constitutional right to do so. For example, after former African American slaves were allowed to vote, some states did not want them to vote, so they required voters to be able to read and write. They knew that recently freed slaves were prevented from learning to read and write by their former owners. All right, so voting is a right, an inalienable right that we have given from the Constitution. And when the Constitution was first written, the only people who had the right to vote were older white men who owned land. And then over time, more people were given the right to vote. When the 13th Amendment was created, it ended slavery. The 14th Amendment gave African Americans citizenship, and the 15th Amendment gave African American males the right to vote. So that all happened in a span of a very short time in the late 1800s. Then you have in the early 1900s, in 1919, 1920, you had a suffrage movement for women. So in 1920, the 19th Amendment was created that allowed women to vote. And Tennessee actually played a major part in that because we were the 36th state to ratify the amendment, which was necessary for this amendment to become law in our country. And I'm not familiar with the Third Amendment about the age thing. so I'll have to look that one up. But once you read this, you have 10 questions. And the 10 questions this is going to go over. Okay. So you have what express? Let's see what express means. I don't know what that means. Okay. So you have 10 questions. You have 1 through 7, which are multiple choice. Now, read these. Make sure you read them multiple times because this will be a grade. Now, the main idea, remember, main idea is what the whole passage was about. Now, this one right here, you're going to have to tell me what the word conduct means. And this one's fill in the blank. Go back and look through the text and see what it says. That's for you. Number 8, 3 amendments of the Constitution had given voting rights to different groups of people. Who were those 3 groups? Please, 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 please give me your answer in a complete sentence. Why did some states require voters to be able to read and write? Remember, that goes all the way back to when African Americans were finally given the right to vote, and white Americans were scared of African Americans changing the vote. And then number 10, explain how the right to vote in the United States is impacted by the Constitution and the 50 states. Use information from the text. Also, you have a spelling assignment for my 4th graders. You are writing a sentence for each of your spelling words. For my 5th graders, you're writing a paragraph. Now, my 5th graders, I will put a video about that paragraph a little later, but this was your assignment for Tuesday. I hope you all have a good day. Let me get out of here.